turns out that fritzing doesn't have an ability when you're in breadboard view, which is how you lay out Protoshields, which don't actually show up very well in PCB view. You can't really reverse it. So I'm going to have to go out with the printouts I've got. I am just heating up the soldering iron over here. Okay, so going to clamp that up here. I'm just going to heat up the soldering iron, which is currently heating now. Suck off all of the solder over here, put the solder onto the joints here. A short time later, I've done the board, spot the difference. These are a bit of a pain, and I'm wondering actually, instead of trying to drag solder across, whether I should be using, I don't know, the tiny ends of little leads I've cut off of other components. I know that Ben Heck likes to keep a collection, and maybe this is one of the things he uses it for. Anyway, I'm now going to go and test this board again, fit it onto the CNC, and we'll see how it goes. So now I've got the actual device mounted onto the Arduino, as in the connectors. I was looking for a way to put it inside that CNC machine. Now there's obviously a big metal case, there's a lot of other cables going on, so I thought, well, I might want to have its own box. Now, I've recently bought myself a rather nice new phone, and the nice new phone had some internal packaging like this. I've added one additional hole here, which matches up with some of the other additional holes inside the packaging, and I can use that for a USB cable, and then I can pop this inside. Now it means that while debugging, obviously I won't be able to see my lights, and I might eventually want to solder some additional, I don't know, some additional LEDs across the pins on here, like the TX, RX, and pin 13, which is just used for indication. But this is quite a nice little box. We'll maybe put a slot in for the ribbon there. As it stands, even for prototyping it now, this is kind of a perfect little box to put it in. I will pop this onto the CNC, and maybe I'll be able to do a test run tonight. So after putting this together and soldering it the right way up, I placed it in a cardboard box on top of the other electronics inside here. So we've got that ribbon cable going from the top of here into the connector on the control board here. There's a USB cable just coming out of the Arduino, out of the back here, flapping in the breeze. I would like to see if I can get a connection from this B-type to maybe a mini type coming out the back here, since USB mini seems to be rather ubiquitous right now, so I might find out a way to do that. But I have some slightly more interesting plans at some point to convert this to Octoprint, so perhaps it can be a Wi-Fi and internet-based or web-based printing instead. However, for now, this does me just fine. I will show this actually working. The case is slightly tricky to put on, this case. You've got to kind of hold it in place, and it's little Allen keys-based screws. I've done a small test of the device. It appears to work. It's obviously much more solid than the parallel port. The only thing that's not working is the emergency stop, and I'm frankly a bit concerned, because emergency stop is quite an important safety feature of the device, and I've had to use it more than once when, not so much safety, but when things have just gone horribly wrong. So I think it's out with the multimeter to find out why. I have actually tested all the connections to verify they are connected correctly, or connected through. So it may just be I just have the wrong pin. I'm going to come clean and say that actually I'm missing some segments of original footage. So I'm going to try and do some footage now of the machine in action using the internal port that I put in with the Arduino and running GRBL. So let's get it plugged in, and we can investigate what was going on with the emergency stop. As I recall, the emergency stop signal was coming out from the GRBL interface when queried, but it looked like it was carrying out some remaining commands in the buffer, and it didn't stop the spindle, but that's actually more to do with the wiring of this. So at the moment, the most reliable way to e-stop is not this e-stop button, but is actually this power button over here, to make sure I'm on the right one. And this time, as I say, I'm going to do spindle off. Now I'll do another video on why this is missing. I've actually patched that at the back, and there'll be other videos explaining, because there was actually a disaster with the machine that caused me to unplug that and set it up that way. So let's get it plugged in and see where we get. Let's just plug in all the axes. So there's the 3 axes connectors and the spindle connector itself. I haven't put all the screws back in on the case. A, it's safe enough as it is for now, and B, because I'm probably needing to get into it a bit more, I'm just going to leave it connected enough to not flap off and fall out and end up with my fingers inside the mains area, but easy enough to remove. It means it can vibrate and rattle. The other thing is I'm doing this instead of in its usual bench in a more filmable location, but that means there may be some vibration on it. So, even though there's nothing running on it, let's wear these. I'll just take off that. I got it connected up. I'm going to turn it on. Let's first see if I can actually connect to the port. So where is Gerbil? Let's turn this on. Hopefully the spindle will stay stopped. We had a problem before where the spindle kept running when it shouldn't have. Turn it on. Okay, that click was this actually coming under control, so you can kind of see there's resistance in the steppers now. Gerbil is saying it's connected. Let's see if we can get any movement out of it. Oh, that's quite a big movement size. So now if I go back like this, oh. Ah, now that noise there, that's it losing steps. So we may have a maximum speed issue with our gerbil settings. Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's see what happens if I do a return to 0. Okay, so it is kind of working. Right, let's do file mode. Draw a circle. So this should make it go through a circular motion and demonstrate that we have full control, at least of the 2D axes. We've seen the 3D axes work at the third axis. Z axis work as well. Okay, that's incredibly slow. I can see the Z axis making some motion. And I think I'm going to use a little bit of video editor magic to speed this up. Okay, this file obviously has it set to an extraordinarily slow speed. It's about a quarter of the way round. I think at this point I'm going to pause and cancel that. Let's do a machine control and do a return to 0 when it's ready. So, although I've told it to cancel the file, it's still doing plenty of movements before it zeroes. This is something to do with the way Gerbil, at least the version of Gerbil on here, works, in that it's actually buffered up all these commands, and it's occasionally happened with e-stop, and I think the pause feature seemed to be more useful than the e-stop in that version. I think in later versions it stops immediately when told to e-stop. So if I hit the e-stop, well, it was already in the e-stop state. So, nothing at all. And so the only way I can truly e-stop is doing a hard power down. Which is a bit drastic, but if there's no other e-stop, it'll do nicely. So if I start it up again, it's still buffered. So actually what's happened with that hard power down is I've powered down the stepper controls. The Arduino GRBL is still running. So there is definitely diagnosis to be done to find out how to make the Arduino stop the commands, other than just doing the command to stop it and pause it. But if I do a reset on it, Well, that did it. So I might want to make it so the e-stop signal does that. Now, machine status here is showing alarm, an alarm status, but it was showing that before it sent the whole set. Let's reset 0. Ooh, because it's in the error state. Okay. So now I've cleared the error state and turn to 0. So I think what I'll do in a later video is tear all this down, find out where this e-stop button is going, because it doesn't appear to say there's any kind of a status on GRBL, which is a bit of a worry. So if I power this down and ask GRBL for status, appears to be fine. If I turn it on again, there's still no status error update. So there's a major problem with the e-stop. I'm probably going to have to open it up, check all those connections, see if the e-stop button is still connected to anything, and see if there's also any other electronics I'm missing to make that really work. Because if that was then about to do something really wrong, not having an e-stop puts me in a dangerous, potentially dangerous situation. So that's what's next for this.